Hello my friends, my name is Erin. Welcome back to another video, or welcome if you are new. Today is going to be a reading vlog, but a very interesting type of reading vlog. If you all know me, I am a horror girly. I love horror movies, I love horror books, I love anything scary, spooky, all of that good stuff. However, over the last few years, me and horror have had a rocky relationship. I feel like I haven't loved a lot of the books that I've been picking up. Last year's reading was kind of a struggle for me. I felt like I hated everything I was picking up and I just wasn't having a good time staying in my comfort zone. So, because it's 2025 and a new year, I decided that this was going to be the year that I tried and experimented with different genres. I am not a big fantasy reader. I did dabble in fantasy when I was in high school. I read The Mortal Instruments, I read Twilight, I read some other books about vampires and stuff about immortal beings. I dabbled here and there, but I was always more of like a dystopian person or a romance person or a horror person when I was in high school. And when I got to be an adult, I stuck with mostly horror, some thrillers, some mysteries. I, of course, read romance still, and I just kind of stay in that box. I don't really go outside of that box. And I think that trying some fantasy out would be interesting and hopefully get me out of this reading rut that I've been in since 2024. So I have three pretty different types of fantasy books. I think they're all pretty different from each other, and I'm going to give you my reactions to reading them, the process of reading them, my thoughts. Now, don't go in expecting some thought-provoking reviews, and don't expect me to be an expert reviewer of fantasy because I haven't read a lot of fantasy. This is really more of a beginner reacting to fantasy, a horror reader reading fantasy, if you will. So, you know, don't expect some intense thoughts and profound reviews or anything like that. But I am excited. So first up, the first book that I'm going to attempt to read is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now, this is probably a bad idea to start with this one. You know, we'll see. But I've heard great things, and I'm actually doing a buddy read with my friend Mary over on Instagram. Her Instagram is A Plot to Remember. So we're going to read this together and then talk about it over on Instagram. So this is why I'm picking this one first, but also it's really hyped up and I feel left out, so I want to give this one a try. I know this is part of a trilogy. I do have the other two books as well. But of course I'm going to start with book one. So this is the first book that I will be attempting to read in this vlog. So I hope you are excited for this fantasy journey that I'm going on. I hope you're excited to see my thoughts and feelings and experience the roller coaster that I'm about to go on. And if you are, thank you so much for watching, and let's get started. Okay, so I just got done filming my February wrap-up, and I wanted to do a little check-in for The Poppy War. I just made it to part 2, you can see. So I'm like 220 pages-ish, and I don't have a lot of thoughts, okay, because I'm still processing a lot of this book so far. But I thought I would do a little check-in, give you my initial thoughts so far, how I'm faring as a beginner newbie fantasy reader. So this story is about Rin. She is an orphan and she ends up getting into this elite military academy, and where I am right now in the book, I don't really know what to expect from this point on. But part 1 was a lot of her taking the test, preparing for the test, getting into the academy, and it's been her first year at the academy and what she's kind of dealt with being an outsider. And I mean, because she is an orphan, she's grown up in this southern region that is definitely looked down upon. Her skin color is darker, her accent is different than theirs. She's a girl, which is definitely not as common at this military academy. They have very few girls that do you know, ace the test and get in. And so she's very much an outsider. She has like one friend who I love. He's a sweetheart, at least so far. I mean, I don't know if anything is gonna happen. I hope not. But he's a sweetheart, and it's definitely just her acclimating to this academy and, you know, the classes she's taking and how even the like professors or teachers treat her differently for being an outsider. It's been a lot of that. Now, where I am in the book now, where part 2 is going to start, it's taken a turn, okay? It's taken a turn. Now, I don't know if this was a bad decision on my part to start this series or to read this book first as like one of my big intros into fantasy. Now, I've read cozy fantasy before, but this is like my first like big fantasy, okay? I would say the biggest thing I'm having trouble with is the politics, and like just the history of this empire that is being talked about. I feel like the concepts are really slippery in my mind. I can see them, I can see the shapes of them, I can grab them, but they kind of slide out of my grasp. They're very slippery. I can't really I can't really grab it fully. So I'm definitely just going for it. Like, I'm just trying my best. The politics are losing me a little bit. I don't know if it's overly complex or if I'm just not used to it. I'm gonna assume I'm just really not used to fantasy politics, and it's just hard for my brain to kind of get into that mode of reading and understanding and processing. So that's definitely the part I'm having the biggest trouble with. The writing has been fine. I'm enjoying Rin as a main character. I'm enjoying the plot so far. Besides the politics, I think some of the myths about this like empire and the gods, I think I'm having also a little bit of trouble making concrete ideas fully formed in my head. Like I said, they're like slippery little eels wiggling around in my brain. I can see them, just haven't fully gotten them. I'm hoping as I continue to read, it's gonna get easier and easier and easier. Hopefully I'm not missing too much, because honestly, that would be horrible. And that would be only my fault. I couldn't be mad at anyone else but myself and my brain. But so far, so good. I'm enjoying it. I know that this book is devastating. I know this series is devastating. I haven't hit it yet, but like I said, I'm only around like 30-ish% into the book, and I know it's coming. I don't know what's coming, but I know it's coming, and I'm scared. I don't know what kind of emotional roller coaster I'm about to go on. I don't know if I'm gonna cry. Those are my thoughts on the Poppy War so far. I am going to probably finish it here soon, hopefully. I am reading slower because I'm trying to comprehend more than I usually do. So I'm trying my best. As of right now, that's how I'm feeling about the Poppy War. So I will check in probably when it is complete. Oh my god. I have finished The Poppy War, and this was an intense book. Honestly, I feel like I may have screwed myself over choosing this to be like the first hardcore fantasy I attempt as a non-fantasy reader. I feel like that was almost a giant mistake. Not because this book isn't good, that's not the reason. It's just that it's really fantasy. And I know that sounds so silly to say as someone who probably reads fantasy. If you're watching and you read fantasy all the time, you're probably like, yeah, no freaking duh, this is fantasy. But as someone who has only really dipped their toes into cozier fantasy, where the stakes aren't that high and it's a slower pace, this was a lot. This was very like heavy on politics and war and world building, and those are things that I've had very little interaction with in books at this level. I mean, I've read fantasy before, but it was like high school YA fantasy. Like, I was in high school. My brain, I think it absorbed easier as a high school student. I don't know, but this, and it's so complicated because it was affecting my enjoyment level, but not necessarily in a bad way. I just had to really take my time with this book and slow down my reading, because I do read pretty quickly. I do read pretty fast, and I felt like I had to read much slower to ingest and comprehend the things that this book was trying to give me. And it did make it a little hard. Like, I felt a little stupid while reading this book, especially through the first half, where a lot is thrown at you. The academy, the characters, you're learning about the world that Rin and the people live in, the empire, the structure of how the empire is run, like the history. Like, it was very hard at first for me to follow along, and I felt like a lot of it was going over my head, and I will be honest, I still think that. I feel like this is a book I'll have to reread to really grasp it, and maybe like annotate, tab, that kind of thing. I think if I did another read of this later on, I would probably get even more on a second read. So that's not the book's fault. That's just me being a non-fantasy reader. The first half was a little harder for me. I felt like it was a lot of, setup. It's a lot of introduction and a lot of things I'm not used to. So it took me a minute to get my brain into the groove of reading this kind of stuff. It was hard. But the second half, I was way more invested. The second half is more war heavy. The war is going on, fighting and battles and strategy and that kind of stuff. So I think the second half definitely went faster for me and it was easier to grasp. But I still think I could do a reread. Like, I still think I need the first half to read it again to comprehend even more than I did. So that was probably my bad for starting out with this book. I think I underestimated how intense it was gonna be. I should have known because I've heard things about this book. That aside, I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very depressing book. It's not really what I expected, but not in a bad way. It's just really depressing. I feel like Rin is a really interesting character to read from. I personally really liked Rin. I liked seeing her go from 14 to 19, because at the beginning of the book she's 14 and at the end of the book she's 19, and I liked watching her progress. I think she's a very emotionally driven character, and some of her decisions are rash and based solely on how she feels, and you know, that affects a lot of how the book progresses, and I'm sure how the series is going to progress. So I can see why a lot of people think Rin is a not great character, but personally I really enjoy her. I like seeing her behave in that way. I know that sounds weird, but I like seeing a non-perfect main character because she's kind of a chosen one in a sense. There are some similarities. I think, you know, if you read a lot of fantasy, the main character tends to be like the chosen one. So she does have those aspects about her, but I kind of like seeing her make mistakes. I like seeing her not be perfect and do things that aren't necessarily the best choice or a good choice. I mean, those are subjective, but I like seeing that. I think it's interesting. I think also she is very young and her brain, you know, thinks she's doing the right thing, and I like it. I like watching her choose what she's doing. I think it's very interesting, and I liked her. I liked her a lot. I liked a lot of the characters, actually. Very intense towards the end. Again, very depressing. It's very gruesome, and, you know, it's war. People die. It's very descriptive, and it doesn't hold back on showing what war does. And I really liked this. I thought it was a really good book. I will probably give it 4.5 stars. It wasn't perfect for me, but I don't think that's the book's fault. I think it was my fault. I think upon a reread, it would probably be a 5-star. And if I sit on the book longer or continue the rest of the series, I might change my rating to a 5-star. But as of right now, it's more of a 4.5, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed this book. I'm gonna have to take a break though, because this was a heavy hitter. This was a heavy start. Wow. I really started the video off with probably, I don't know, maybe the best or maybe the worst. I don't know, but yeah, it's probably gonna be a few days before I read the next fantasy book because this was a lot for me. So I will come back when I have centered myself and I feel like my brain can take another fantasy book. So I'll see you all when I've decided what and when that'll be. Oh, ew, what the? Okay. Oh my god, okay. Shut up. Oh, what the? I do not like you. I really don't like you. Like, at all. I really, really, really don't like you. This little... Ooh. What? Wait. I knew it. I knew it. Oh, I knew it. Aw, that's cute. Aww. Okay, so I've finished Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is the first book in the Wayward Children series, and this is a weird book. This is a weird little book. I didn't know anything about it before I bought it, which is a very typical thing that I do. I like to know very little about books before I read them, just because I feel like knowing too much can ruin the experience. Sometimes the plot synopsis gives too much away. Sometimes I get these ideas in my head and build the book up to be something that it won't be, and then I'm disappointed. I just really like going in blind. I think it helps. It just helps me understand the book better because I'm reading it from beginning to end with no expectations, and I'm just experiencing it as it is. The only thing that I did know about this is it's very beloved. People absolutely love this series. I hear it talked about all the time. That's really all I know. I'm pretty sure there are 10 books in this series. They're all about this length. I think they're all very short, and I really had no other idea what to expect. But in this book, we're following Nancy, who is 17. She has just arrived at Eleanor West's home for wayward children. Now, this is like a boarding school of sorts, but all the kids that are there because they have found these doors. And when they went through the doors, they ended up in these magical fantasy realms, and they spent time there, and they have come back to the real world for various reasons. Now they're having trouble acclimating back to the real world. Some don't want to be in the real world. They want to go back to those fantasy lands. They believe that's where their home is, that's where they belong. They do not want to be here. Some don't necessarily want to go back to that fantasy realm, but they're still having, trouble being where they are because the rules and expectations and the way people live, the way people talk, everything is very different, and all these worlds are very different from each other. They have different ways of explaining this, which I found very confusing when I was reading it, especially at first. Some of the words and labels that they give these realms, I was like, what? So it did take a bit for me to get into the story because it didn't make a lot of sense at first. I felt very confused and lost, and I felt like nothing was being explained well. However, I have seen something similar to this in media before. I have consumed media like this. The two that pop into my head are Coraline, she obviously goes through a tiny door, and Narnia. I feel like Narnia is the big one because the kids go through the wardrobe and end up in Narnia, and that's all I could really picture or imagine when I was thinking about this book when I was reading it. There's also a murder mystery happening in this story, which I was very shocked by. It kind of blindsided me, if I'm gonna be honest, not because I didn't like it, just because I didn't expect the story that I was getting to also have a murder mystery in it. The murder mystery was pretty good. It was very interesting, but I wouldn't say it's like a hardcore mystery. I think if you read murder mysteries a lot, you probably will understand what's going on and who did it. I figured out the person pretty quickly because I feel like there was a lot of hints, a bit like big hints, not like tiny little ant hints. They were like in your face hints. So, I figured that out fairly quickly. I don't think it ruined the experience for me because this book wasn't necessarily just a murder mystery, so I'm not basing my enjoyment solely on the fact that I guessed that, because it feels different, because if in a murder mystery the whole point is the murder mystery, right? But this isn't solely a murder mystery. So because of the other factors and stuff happening, it was easy to not be super upset that I had figured out what was going on. I think where this book shines though is the characters. These characters, they're so cute. I loved Nancy, I loved Cade, I loved Christopher, I loved Jack and Jill. I even really liked Eleanor. I had a weird feeling about her the whole time. I didn't like her at first, but I do like her now. And I just feel like the characters are why you like this story. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like the characters really make this story. So if that's not something that you like, where you have to really enjoy the characters to like the book, I mean, I think the plot is good on its own, but I do think the characters really make this story what it is, because if the characters weren't who they were, I feel like the plot would be a little thin. So if that bothers you, you might not like it. I think there was great representation in this book. Nancy is asexual, Cade is trans, and I can see why people would think it didn't feel necessary to the story, but I actually think those were very important topics and themes necessary for their story. Like, I think Nancy being asexual and her fantasy realm and stuff, I think it made sense. I think Cade also being trans and his fantasy realm and just his personality in general, I think it all made sense, and why those were needed to be in the story. I think it made the story a little less surface level. But truly, those characters, so freaking cute. I love the characters. I know this is like a 10-book series, I think I said earlier, and do I want to get involved into a 10-book series? Not really. No, I do not. I know that they're all pretty short, but it actually kills me thinking that I'm gonna have to read all these books. That's the one thing about fantasy I don't like, is they're all series. Like, I don't want to have to be involved in like 15 series at one time. That's gonna kill me. I'm not a series person in general usually, so fantasy is really, it's really gonna test me. It's really testing me. I am doing a reading journal this year, and I'm filling out a series portion page thing. I'm doing a little series spread, and I'm writing down all the series that I'm involved in and getting involved in this year. And now I'm gonna have to add this series, and this series is gonna take up like a whole freaking half a page. Not really, but kind of, actually. Do I want to get involved in another series? No, I really don't. I really don't. Am I probably gonna read every single one of these books? Yeah, I probably am. Yeah, I probably am. Great. I will probably give this, I'm unsure on my rating. I'm really unsure on my rating. Like, I'm between like a 4 and a 4.5. I'd probably lean more to a 4.5. Watch me just bump it up to a 5. This and The Poppy War, which is the first book I was reading in this vlog, are gonna just bump up to a 5-star, and I'm gonna just be telling you guys 4.5, but it's actually just gonna be a 5-star. I don't know. But I'm leaning towards 4.5. 4.5 probably, but I did really like it. It was cute, it was easy to read. Very weird little book, but I did enjoy it. Now I'm gonna have to get all the other books, so great, fantastic. Anyways, next fantasy book, I don't know what it's gonna be, so you'll see it here soon in a minute when I pick it. I don't know. I have to go look at my options, so you'll find out here soon, as will I, because I don't even know what the next one is. So, all right, bye. this girl, this girl, this girl, this girl. If I'm right about this, I figured it out before 100 pages, and I'm gonna be so mad at our main character, okay? Because I knew it. I literally called it. Page 103. Just found out I was right. Oh my god. Okay. Alright, so last night I finished Our Infinite Fates, which is the book that I decided to go with. I was going to pick something else, but in this vlog I really wanted to pick different types of fantasy books, not make them all the exact same. And so I decided to use this as more of like a romantasy option. And I actually really enjoyed this book. I know it's a newer release, it just came out. I got it from Book of the Month. You can't see, I don't know why I pointed at the spine. I got it from Book of the Month, and I didn't know much about it except that it was about like past lives, and I was like, that sounds interesting, I'll go with it. So in this book we're following Evelyn. She is our main character, and she remembers all her past lives. And before her 18th birthday, she's hunted by this entity, this person named Arden, and Arden kills her. And when Arden kills her, Arden also dies because their souls are like tethered to each other. In this life that Evelyn is living, her little sister, who I believe is 14, she has leukemia, and she's the only person that has that matches her for stem cells. So she wants to stay alive as long as possible to make sure her little sister lives. And this is like 2 weeks before her 18th birthday. So she's, you know, nervous that she's about to die. Like Arden's gonna come out of nowhere and, you know, end it before she has time to save her little sister. I found this really interesting because I'm super fascinated by reincarnation. I've actually been talking about reincarnation with my therapist, which sounds very weird, I know, but it's just something that I'm very interested in, and I like the idea of reincarnation. I like past lives, and I think, you know, it's just an interesting topic, and I liked reading about their past lives because you do get alternating chapters of like the present day and then in the past, and you get to see all the different lives that Evelyn and Arden kind of lived. And I don't know, it was so fascinating to me. I was really enamored with the past lives aspect. I just thought that was really cool. And I mean, I haven't read much that is similar to this. Again, this is like my introduction to fantasy, so I haven't read a lot of fantasy. So there could be a lot of other books like this, but I haven't read anything like this. And it was really interesting because Arden and Evelyn have this love for each other. They're in love with each other, but they can't have a life together. And I think once you start uncovering why and seeing all the past lives that they lived, it just makes for a very fascinating and almost thoughtful read. I don't know. I'm really fascinated with reincarnation. So I just really liked that aspect. I really enjoyed, I honestly I was gonna say I enjoyed the past lives chapters more, but that's not true because the present day was very interesting as well. And I liked Evelyn, I liked Arden, I don't know, there's not much I didn't like about this book. I had a good time while reading it. The only thing that ruined this book for me was the end, and I can see why a lot of people will like this ending. For me personally, I felt like it was, it was satisfying in a sense because what I want to happen kind of happened. As a personal preference, I didn't like the route that the ending took, and that's just a me problem. I know that's just a me problem. It reminds me of this like anime movie that I watched, which I'm not going to name because if someone's seen it, because it is fairly popular, so if you've seen it, then you'll know how this ends, so I'm not gonna spoil that, but it reminded me of this anime movie, and I was so devastated by the ending. And the thing is the ending isn't sad, it's not bad. I mean, it's kind of sad, but it's not bad. It's not like a bad ending. It's still a hopeful, like kind of sweet ending, but there's something about it that really bothers me. And I can't go into specifics, so I can't explain why, but there's just something about it that kind of bothers me. And it just leaves this like unsatisfied feeling for me. I don't know. But it is also satisfying in a sense because it is good. I don't know, okay? I don't know how to explain it without spoiling it. But overall, I would probably give this a really high 4-star. I don't feel like I liked it as much as the other 2 books I read, but I did really enjoy my time with this one, and I had a good time while reading it. Like, I really enjoyed it. I want to read more romantasy because I love romance, and I feel like that's going to be a good way for me to enjoy fantasy, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading more romantasy for sure. But I did like this book. I just don't think it's on the same level as the other 2 that I read. But I will say this was a pretty satisfying experiment because I enjoyed all 3 fantasy books that I read, which is shocking. I really didn't expect that to happen. I said 2025 was going to be my year of fantasy, and it might be coming true. It might be coming true. Yeah, this was my vlog of reading fantasy books. I hope you enjoyed watching the experiment, watching my reactions, watching me attempt fantasy for the first time in such a long time. So yeah, let me know if you have any recommendations for me, if you want to see me do this with any other fantasy books, you want to see my reactions, me and like reading them, whatever. Leave those in the comments down below. And yeah, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed and you want to see more fantasy reading vlogs from me, maybe in the future. Who knows? We'll see. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, fantasy. And with that being said, I hope you're having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!